So TTArtisan have sent over this lens for me to test out. So this is the TTArtisan 50mm f2 for full frame sensors. And you can get this for the Nikon Z mount, Fuji X mount, Sony E mount, and the mount that we're testing it on today, which is the Lumix L mount. So today I've paired it with my Lumix S9 and I've come to Llandudno just to see what we can capture. So just before we go out and do any photography with this lens, I thought I'd talk about its design first. And first of all, as you can see right here, it's quite a compact lens and it suits the S9's body really well. The main issue I've had with the Lumix S9 is a lot of the lenses are quite large, so it kind of defeats the purpose of having a small full frame camera. But this one just pairs with it really nicely. Now this is a manual focus lens, so you've got no autofocus here, but the manual focus ring is very, very smooth. It's really nicely dampened. It just feels very nice to use. The rest of the build quality as well is really nice. It's a lot higher quality than I was expecting, especially for this price point. So this currently retails in the UK for £79, which makes it a very budget option. But the build you get just doesn't reflect the price. You've got a full metal build here. And like I said, the focus ring's really nice to use. You've got a nice click on the aperture ring. The lens itself secures really tightly to the mount of the camera. And yeah, just overall, the build quality is just really nice. Now, I don't know whether this matters to any of you guys out there, but the lens does protrude slightly as you focus in and out, but it's only by maybe a centimeter, if that. The only really downside that I've found up to now is this lens cap here. It's a screw-on type lens cap, so you have to screw it onto your filter thread, and it's just a bit tricky to line up sometimes, and it takes a few rotations to get it on and off. I just much prefer a normal style clip-on lens cap. One other thing to mention, I suppose, is it doesn't come with a lens hood. I suppose I can't complain at this price point really. It probably keeps the price quite low. But I would say this lens would suit one of those small square type lens hoods. So yeah, up to now, I'm quite impressed with this lens, but let's go and take some photos now and see how it performs. Oh, and I will quickly mention, I'll film some B-roll on this as well. So any clips that are filmed on this lens, I will leave a little tag. Most of the B-roll clips I'm going to film on this lens as well. So yeah, let's go and see how it fares with some photo and video. I will say the one thing that I have been struggling with is the fact that this is a manual lens paired with the S9. And I think this is more a fault of the S9 rather than the lens itself. The issue I'm having is it's just not a very pleasant experience just using the back LCD screen rather than having a dedicated viewfinder or EVF. I just find that when I'm trying to get the focus right, even though I do have the focus peaking on, and I have been turning the sensitivity up to +1 or +2 depending on the situation, it just feels a little bit more cumbersome rather than having an EVF. I'm also noticing that I think because this lens doesn't have any contacts, the camera doesn't know that I'm trying to focus, so it doesn't punch in. So I have to manually punch in, which is kind of frustrating, and it just kind of ruins the experience a little bit. So I do wish I had a viewfinder on the S9, just because it would make using manual lenses a little bit nicer. I know there's a lot of you guys that use the S9 with manual lenses, but for me it's just not a very pleasant experience trying to use the LCD screen and trying to get your focus right. Another thing I'm having to learn is how to shoot on a manual lens, because this is not something I usually do. I'm just having to learn to slow down and think about my composition a little bit more and just be a little bit more patient and make sure that I get the focus right. So yeah, that's another thing I'm just having to adjust to today, because like I say, I'm not used to shooting on a manual lens. I am liking the experience, but it's just very different to what I usually do, because usually I'm quite fast. I will go around and I'll be in aperture priority mode and I'll just rely on the autofocus and I'll just be snapping photos. Whereas now I'm having to learn to slow down, be patient with my focus and just make sure everything's right. And it's nice because you do think about the composition a little bit more, and I am enjoying myself, and I think it's something I'm going to explore a little bit more in the future. But yeah, still at the moment I'm still trying to figure out what this lens can do. The photos from the back of the screen look great, but I'll properly review these when we get home back into the office. And yeah, I'll pick up with you guys in a little bit. Okay, so I'm back at the office now, so I thought I'd just talk you through some of the images I got on the day and talk you through some of my opinions and some of the characteristics that I've noticed about this lens. And just before we get into that, I do want to mention that this is not going to be a full review of this lens. It's more just my opinions and some of the characteristics that I've noticed with a day of shooting. I just want to mention as well that TTArtisan are not sponsoring this video in any way. They just sent the lens over for free in exchange for me to make a video on it. And they've also not had any editorial input into the making of this video. So the first thing that stood out for me with this lens was the vignetting that you get in the corners. As you can see here, the edges are quite dark, and I've noticed that in every image, all of the corners are quite dark and there's some heavy vignette in there. And this does seem to happen at any aperture value as well. Now, I don't particularly mind this because I do add a bit of vignetting into my photos anyway, so this wasn't really an issue for me, but it's just something to keep in mind as I know this could put some people off. I also did find it a little bit more tricky to correct in Lightroom as there's no correction presets available for this lens. So you have to kind of dive in and select a preset and then try and create your own. So the next thing that stood out to me was the corners of the images have this like almost swirl effect bokeh, and it looks really nice in my opinion. Now what it does mean is anything that's in the corner of your images is kind of like out of focus and it's got this like effect to it. So I can see how this would put some people off. But for me personally, I quite like this effect because it does give the photos a bit more of a vintage feel, and it just adds a bit more character to an image rather than it just being sharp across the whole frame. I will just point out as well that what this means is anything that's in the corner of your images will be slightly out of focus, so do bear that in mind. You do kind of have to compose images like this where the center subject's kind of like in the center of your frame, because anything away from that starts to go out of focus. I will just briefly mention focus as well. I did have a few images like this one here where the camera was showing me that the image was in focus with the focus peaking, but as I've got them on my computer, I can see that they're quite out of focus and you can just see that something's gone wrong here. And there was some other images that I wanted to use that were just unusable because they were that out of focus. I think this is more down to my camera and my skills at this point, rather than it being the lens itself. So what I was doing on the day is I was adjusting the sensitivity of the focus peaking, and most of the time I was either at +1 or +2. And what I think's happened here is because I've got the sensitivity up so high, if I was shooting at say f2, I think it showed too much peaking and it's kind of led to some images being slightly out of focus. And again, this is more of an issue with the Lumix S9 because I think, again, if it had a viewfinder, I would have found it a little bit more easy to focus on the day. But I think what I'll do next time I shoot with this lens is I will lower the focus peaking down if I'm shooting at like a f2, f2.8, and hopefully that will lead to more of my images being in focus. I do wish the lighting would have been better on the day as well. As you can see here, and as you can probably tell from most of my images, it just went really overcast and quite grey, and I kind of struggled a little bit to find compositions that were interesting because the light was so dull. So I have tried, and then I've tried to make them a little bit more interesting in my editing as well. But I do think if you went out on a really bright sunny day and you had some interesting light to play with, I do think this lens would be really nice to play with. I think because of those out of focus edges and the vignetting as well, they won't be quite as... I think the vignetting wouldn't be as noticeable, but the out of focus effect would kind of show up a little bit more and it'd look quite cool. So yeah, I will be going out shooting with this lens a little bit more often. I want to see what it looks like on a bright sunny day, so I'm going to try and take it out again soon. And yeah, I do really like the look that you get out of this lens. I really like the vintage retro look at the moment, and if you look at some of my other images, it's how I edit my photography. I try and make it look a bit more filmic. I try and take away some of that digital look, and I like my images to be quite soft and quite bright, and I don't mind overexposing like the skies and stuff, because especially if they're like this and there's not much interest there, I'd rather just blow it out if it makes the image look more interesting. So yeah, this lens does cater to my style, so I definitely want to go out and use it more. I want to learn how to use the manual focus lenses a little bit more as well. And overall, I liked the shooting experience because I was slowing down a little bit more. It was just a little bit more fun, and I was thinking about my compositions a little bit more. I think I would have had an easier time, like I said, if the light was a bit better, but I still enjoyed myself on the day. I do sometimes wish that other lens and camera manufacturers kind of lent into this like more characteristic look on some of their lenses. It doesn't have to be on every lens, but if they released a lens every now and then that had some of these characteristics where not everything was super sharp and it had some weird bokeh effects and things like that, I just think it's more fun to play with than some of the other lenses that are out there that are just always tack sharp and everything's just like in focus and looks amazing and stuff. Like I'm kind of getting bored of like the digital look of stuff, and I'm more going towards more filmic looks, and a lot of the creators I follow have that type of style, and that sort of look appeals to me at the moment. And yeah, it'd be quite interesting if we had more lenses on the market like this. So one more thing I want to mention is if you are thinking about picking this lens up, I will leave an affiliate link in the description below. If you want to support this channel and you're thinking about picking this lens up, do consider going through my affiliate link, as it helps support this channel and helps me make more content like this. And it also shows TTArtisan that you've watched this video and you were interested, and hopefully they will continue to work with me in the future. But yeah, do let me know if you're interested in picking one of these lenses up. Let me know what you think about these photos and whether the characteristics of the lens are to your style or not. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.